Well, took us a minute to get all of our tech stuff sorted out. I think we're pretty close. So I'm going to go ahead and start. I'd like to start by thanking some of the sponsors and partners that we've got that have helped put on this event tonight. I'll start with Rack 59. Where'd Brent go? Brent, cool. I guess without Greg here to cause a cheerleading section, this is a little less awkward. So we got Rack 59 helps us out. DD Audio and Project 3810 are providing this space and quite a few other things. Insperity has covered the food for us. Dennis with the Show Starts Now Studios is doing the live streaming, all the video editing, and way more work than we can afford to actually pay him for. Nodecraft is a sponsor this year. I think Jonathan's somewhere here today. And Deep Fork Technology and Hoofi are also sponsors. And we got volunteers on our team. Are Rob Miles, Tarn Langford, Ashley Hart, Ryan Groves, Aubrey Dillon, and me. So the purpose of Startup Grind is to educate, inspire, and connect entrepreneurs like us so that we can have a better community and have a better chance at making things magical. The values of Startup Grind here are to make friends and not contacts, to give first and not take, and to help each other before helping yourself. And I think this group's pretty good at that. We're trying a little different format this time. We wanted to try and see what it would look like if we had someone that was maybe more down the road and more accomplished as an entrepreneur conducting the interview, as well as someone pretty accomplished in the receiving seat. And so Piyush was willing to do this for us, and I really appreciate it. And getting Cody up here at the same time is kind of a big token for us as an organization. So if you guys would give them some thanks, I'd really appreciate that. I'll give Piyush a quickie intro and then let him handle the intro for Cody. Piyush started a company called Digital Tutors back in a long time ago. I've heard your story, and I'm sorry I belched that out, but that grew and exited for $45 million. He's also a best-selling author and an angel investor, and heavily involved here in Oklahoma City with EO, and has a real passion for entrepreneurs. I've seen him be helpful to a lot of people in a lot of different scenarios. He's a really stand-up guy. So thanks, Piyush, and I'll let you take over.
Awesome, thank you. So I have the pleasure to interview a good friend of mine, Cody Blake of liquidfish. Cody and I have traveled the world together, and he is also a stand-up guy who knows a lot about running a business and growing a business, and has been and he and I both have been in every one of your seats wanting to figure it out, and I think he's got some really good insight to share with you guys today. Oklahoma City born, Edmond raised, on the board of EO for 3 years, currently the learning chair, which is the hardest job. I will tell you, it is the hardest job.
It's fun. I love it, yeah.
So Cody, let's talk about kind of early education. Like what did you go to study? Where did that early stuff start?
For me, like, I always was the kid that was like getting in trouble, acting out in class because I was never that challenged. But I, kind of getting into, my career path was my freshman year of high school. I decided to maybe look into computer science. So I was really, I loved math and loved that component of it. And so I started taking AP classes in my sophomore year of high school, and then, learned pretty much self-taught on how to build websites and that was early 2000s, where database-driven content was still on the web, the web-facing consumer side was still pretty new to a lot of businesses. They were so used to this idea of static content, more of what you'd consider websites looking like if they were printed brochures. And so we got into really building out custom content management systems early on before you had all what you've got today. But then decided I'd go to OU. I wanted to study computer science. Got into that school real quick. Figured out that maybe I'm not cut out for a computer science degree. So I was like, okay, I changed my major like 5 or 6 times throughout my tenure at OU. Never really graduated. I still have like 22 credits left. So you can check that box. I'm never probably going to graduate. Unless maybe one day, there's something crazy happens where I've got a lot of free time. I just never had the opportunity to finish. Born and raised by artists. So I always had that, if you want it, you got to work for it mentality, born and raised. So in high school, is this better? I can try this to change this.
I think you could just run it through the box.
Okay, cool. So I'll just hold it in my lap. Is that cool? Is that better? Got a little teddy bear here.
Interview teddy bear.
Yeah. So that's kind of like my education, but where I really started, my entrepreneurial mindset was that, kind of mentality of like, you got to work for it. So in high school, I started a ticket broker company where I call it a brokerage. I was really like the online scalper before StubHub wasn't around at the time. So what I'd do, my sophomore year of high school, is I'd go out and make all this money mowing yards and stuff, and then I'd take all that money and I'd go buy tickets to pretty much any concert that I knew would sell out, like Madison Square Garden, Staples Center, like big time tickets back in early 2000s, like Britney Spears, Justin Timberlake, etc. I had like the best seats in the house, because what I wound up doing is on tickets.com, they didn't have the same kind of security Ticketmaster did, so you could actually hijack the URLs, and you knew what the URLs was going to be. So I was like 3 clicks ahead of every consumer going to buy tickets when they got online. So I'd have like within the first 3 rows at pretty much any show, and just used eBay marketplace to sell all my tickets. So that was kind of like my first taste of what it was to be an entrepreneur. Definitely lost on some shows, and then where I really learned I had a problem is when I'd open up my desk drawer and I'd see I remember seeing Christina Aguilera tickets for a show the night before in St. Louis that I just completely forgot about and never sold. So yeah, my disorganization that I had back then is still a problem today. I'll tell you that.
So having parents who pushed you to, hey, you want something, you go figure it out, really was a blessing.
It was. I guess I still have my hard feelings about it today. But I love them. That ingrained in me that whole, the grind, like why we're all here, Yeah, it definitely was a blessing. I didn't see it at the time. I probably should thank them for that. I haven't done that.
I mean, it's really interesting because it'll be interesting to see how your kids, deal with your success, right?
Yeah.
My kid's the same way. He's not having to put the hustle in like my parents made me do, similar to yours. So you're at OU, and what is the catalyst that says I'm ready to go do my own thing?
Well, being a developer in college, building websites for just about anybody I could get my hands on, any company. I wound up taking a full-time job while I was in school. I was obviously paying for my own school, etc., as a developer for a software company building roofing software of all things. It's the most boring job ever. I was the only developer they had, and I wrote this really large estimating software. And they started flying me around the country to train all of their sales reps on how to use the software. There was like 200 sales reps across the country. They were like a $100 million roofing company every year. So I had to drop out of school. And then I wound up realizing that I really hated working for people that I didn't respect. And I quit without any job, without anything. And I was 20 years old at the time, and that was the last job I had. Working, when I say last job, working for someone where I had like no vision. They had no vision. I was really just a pawn in their whole scheme, and just wasn't treated right. And so when I started going out on my own, one day, I dreamt of having a company where I could be basically everything that this company wasn't to me.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So tell me those early days of liquidfish. Describe it.
Yeah.
Describe.
Got a closet, literally. One of my really like respected mentors in life. He was the one that threw me some projects here and there. He's an older guy. He was probably 18 years older than me. So he was into healthcare, and so I was doing some work for his companies. And he had like this little office space in a random building, like you wouldn't want to really step in. And so I turned this utility closet into an office, and that's where I started doing everything. I contracted out most of my, like, anything that I wasn't great at, like design and like social, all that kind of stuff. Well, really social media wasn't, that's a whole nother story, but I contracted out and just was the developer in this little cube, and then decided, hey, rather than contracting out design, I think I should hire a designer. And so what I did at the time, I went to one client. I said, hey, I really want to grow my business. I need to hire in order to keep fulfilling like your needs. And so what I need to do is put you on a retainer that'll give me some guaranteed revenue where I can, not necessarily be out on a limb every single week. So we wound up doing that. I signed my first client under a retainer. We were doing regular work for them. So I hired a designer. At the time, I didn't have a whole lot of money to offer them on salary, and so what I did is to pull them away from their current job. I was like, I will give you ownership in this business if you help me grow it. I'll give you 5% annually, up to 20% of, this can be yours too, but let's do it together. Well, 3 months in, we lost that client, we lost that retainer, but luckily I had grown, I had enough time over that 3-month span to onboard some more clients, and so we really weren't reliant upon that one contract. And then, between the two of us, she was the designer, the sole designer, and I was the sole developer. I kept growing the business and going out and getting contracts, and then growing what we offered, our service offerings to our clients, shifting more from like just traditional development websites to more digital marketing, and then getting into like ERP integrations, API development, all that kind of more on the software side of things later on down the road. But early on, it was just get one contract, hire, get another contract, make another hire, lose a contract, crap, what do I do? And figure it out as we go.
That's right.
Yeah.
So how long did it take you from starting? We're both an entrepreneurs organization, so the minimum to be in that organization is $1 million in revenue. So how long did it take you to go from I quit and I'm going to start this thing to reaching $1 million in revenue?
Okay, so there's some milestones in there. Between 2008 and 2010, I was just a one-man show, contracting everything out. 2010, I decided I'm really going to go all in on this. And I was married. I was 21 years old at the time. Recently married. I had a recording studio. I'm a huge musician, and a passion of mine has always been in my life to like do that. I want to be in the music business. I had to literally make a decision at that point. I was like, I can't do both, so I gave that up completely. I still play, lots of different instruments on my own time, but I don't record or produce music, which maybe one day I can do that again. But in 2010, so those 2 years of contracting, really trying to figure out my life, and then 2010 to 12, there was 2 to 3 of us for the first 2 years. That's it. And in 2013, I had 5 employees, and we hit $1 million in revenue. Yeah, that was, what was that, 5-6 years ago?
Yeah.
So I've had employees now for 8 or 9 years, which is crazy. It still feels like yesterday. But reaching that $1 million revenue mark, we were having this conversation earlier. It's like, it was that million. Like you think about, you look at numbers and you see 7 digits, and you're like, wow. But when we reached that was never really like. I can't even really remember thinking, okay, we've reached $1 million in revenue, what's next? It's, for me, even to this day, it's not where are we at today, it's where are we going? Like making sure that, we have a clear path.
Yeah.
So but I learned that the hard way.
the hustle never ends.
No,
it doesn't
never.
matter where you are in the revenue spectrum. It just never ends.
I remember, so I had a partner at the time. I bought her out maybe 5 years ago. She made it about 3 years and realized she didn't want to be in the business owner. She just wanted to. That's fine. That was great. So she moved out of state, and I kept going. But I remember thinking to her, man, if we could just get to a point where we had 7 employees and we had like 20 clients we were actively working for, like, that would be amazing. And I don't remember getting to that point ever thinking, okay, we reached it. Still, it's that kind of same mentality. And not to say that I'm like never satisfied, but I'm a firm believer, for me, that it's not about those milestones. It's not about like reaching a certain threshold. The grind is what I love. You know, and so for me, I'm never gonna be satisfied with where I'm at today, because even me personally, it's like, as a person and human being, like I have a lot to learn still. Like as a leader of the company, as a father, so no matter what it is in life, I don't feel like complacency is ever a great thing. I think you should always be constantly learning and growing. And like when I got into EO, so you mentioned EO earlier, I joined the chapter, Oklahoma City's chapter. I joined 5 years ago. This will be my 6th year. That would be in 2013 or 14. That is when I really got to for the first time be put into a situation where I could learn from other entrepreneurs. Up until that point, it was literally just figure everything out. Like, I didn't like taxes and payroll and like accounting and just all of these things that I had no idea what I was doing. Getting into EO and realizing like, hey, no one does. When you're starting a business, like, you just get in there and figure it out.
That's right.
And so EO really helped me understand that I'm not isolated. I'm not like on this island by myself. And that's where we really started peer-to-peer learning, and what this is, and this is awesome, and I love things like this, and I'm going to start trying to make more time and getting plugged into these types of events and attending as well. It's refreshing to be around just all parts of entrepreneurs, whether you're in the infancy stage or whether you've exited. Like, to me, the excitement and the drive will be there for if you're an entrepreneur, like, you've got that bone, that itch in you, it doesn't really go away.
Mm-hmm. So talking about learning and continuing to learn, what if you could go back? Like, what if you could get a message from the past, send a message back that says, hey, 2 things, past Cody, right?
Yeah.
Here's 2 things to watch out for as you go down this path. What would you have advised yourself? Which would be advice for these folks that are about to go down the path or are on the path?
Yeah. Let me start with what I believe is like what the main challenge that I've faced as being a people pleaser, is hiring. And I hire based upon, probably in the past, I've relied too much on personality or different qualities that necessarily weren't applicable to their everyday responsibilities, and really learning what it means to get the right person in the right seat. And I've heard that, and I heard it over and over and over. But until I actually stepped back and started even evaluating the people that I had in the company, like, would I hire this person tomorrow for the job that they're doing today, and asking those kinds of questions to myself and being true and vulnerable even with myself in those moments. It's like, I made so many poor decisions along the way of hiring and firing both. Like, I've kept people in their seats for too long, and that's disadvantage. Like, that's not great for them either. I'm only hurting them in their future career, and I'm only hurting my company by allowing them to sit in that seat and not be able to have success. And so, really, 2.5 years ago, I took a really hard look at the company and at myself and realized that I have zero process in me. Like, I'm not a process person. There's great qualities about me, but I am not the executor. I am a visionary. I have 1,000 ideas a day, and I try to implement way too many of them simultaneously, and it's just complete chaos. And so for me, the biggest thing that I would do differently would be making sure that when I add someone onto the team, that they have a very clear set of expectations and a way for me to hold them accountable to something. And for me, you know, when I hired my first employee, I was like 24 or 25 years old. I didn't know what accountability was. I'm still learning what it means today. And it's not about, like, what I'm learning is it's not always about saying, like, well, what happened and whose fault is it and this and that. It's more like true accountability. What an I vision for my company, it's proactive. If you're holding people accountable, you know, in the best way possible, in my mind, you're not ever really talking about whose fault and blame it is. It's you have processes and metrics in place before to help. I'm not saying everything's going to go perfectly, but it's really putting that process in place, which is something I'm not great at. And so now I have people that are great at that help me do those things. And so it's admitting, like, these are the things that I'm not good at, and that would be the one thing that my biggest message to myself, my past self from the future, would be like, hey, you really need to really consider setting people up for success when they start at your company. And that means casting a vision. That means making sure that they understand, like, where the company is today and what the vision is for the company. I started thinking about maybe some things I'd talk about today, and one of them was vision. I always had this vision in my mind. It's like, okay, it got to be better. That's, for me, that's great. But to my staff and my team who's helping me reach what? No one really knew. And so when I implemented EOS, if you're not familiar, it's Entrepreneur's Operating System. There's a book, Gino Wickman wrote a book called Traction. There's a lot of ancillary books out there, Rocket Fuel, etc., that really push this concept of really basic business principles. That I read this book and I was like, this is all common sense. Why am I not doing any of it? And I implemented. We hired a consultant. This is all they do. And they're, not necessarily like a business coach, but they have expertise and experience in implementing EOS. It's just an operating system for us to track how we're doing and hold people accountable, make sure we do have the right people in the right seats. And so I started really focusing on efficiency and running the business rather than like growing it. And so really the last 2 years have been a reset for my company. And we've pretty much redone how we operate, how we hire, how we onboard, implementation of core values, and like really what that means to a business. I didn't even have core values for the first 6-7 years of the company, and I always thought I was, early 20s. I'm like, core values, oh, that's corporate. I don't need corporate. Like, I want to be everything not corporate. Because I'd been a part of a publicly traded roofing company, like. One, that should never happen, but but anyway, like core values to me were something that made me look what I thought, like made the company look stale and like unappealing to anyone in my generation. And I was so wrong and off in a lot of my thought process and mentalities. So it's more of like looking back at what I would have done differently, or some advice to myself would be, figuring out and trying to like get myself around more entrepreneurs earlier is probably the biggest thing. And the second thing is like getting the right people in the right seats and making sure that they're there. And also being vulnerable with myself. And I have all of these fears constantly, and like I struggle with being a people person. And what impacts does that have on my clients and my company? And like operating out of fear is not good for anyone. Like, hiring decisions based on like, well, we don't have any way to get this project done. Well, hiring the wrong people is going to make that project a complete and utter disaster. So maybe backing up and saying, like, can we take this project on and get it completed successfully might be a better way. However, I will say this, like, slowing off the gas for me isn't what I consider, like, these last 2 years, it hasn't been taking the pedal, like taking my foot off the gas pedal. It's more of like, I'm just looking at things a little differently. You know, continuing on in my journey at Liquidfish, now even today, like now that I've set a vision and cast it, it's like where I want to be at in 2025 is our 7-year vision from last year. I mean, it's a complete pivot. We're shifting, like, we're a client service company today. We have about 180 websites that we host, we build, we manage, and a lot of those are like large applications. I'm not talking brochure sites, like, you know, millions of dollars a day running through e-commerce sites, like drop ships, you know, at 58 countries, like crazy kind of builds. But my vision for Liquidfish is to support some of my own ideas that I have and want to develop, and we're doing that. So I'm reinvesting all of our profits that we have today into our future, which I believe isn't necessarily client work. I want my team at Liquidfish to support, like, these other companies. Like, I want those to be our clients. Yeah. And I want to give my team incentive, like, how do you create a ceiling, you know, or how do you remove a ceiling from a company? And when everyone out there in the job market, especially like in the development world and the tech world, it's crazy right now finding good, talented people. And so one thing that I believe in is putting together a program and compensation that takes that ceiling off and saying, look, if you stick around and believe in this vision, and here's what it is, we can all benefit from this. Yeah. And that's what I'm trying to do now, is build those things, and we're doing it. It's a lot of fun. It's challenging. Again, it feels like I'm getting back into that startup, the true infancy startup stages, which we are. And I think we have an advantage, at least from like an operations standpoint, because, you know, I've been there to some degree. Yeah, obviously, there's a lot of new markets and verticals, but there's a lot of the same lessons carry over.
Yep, totally. So if you were to go back to that first hire, wouldn't
have offered her 5% for annually.
Okay, so there's a lesson to be learned there, right?
She would have taken probably one.
Yeah.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, or maybe not, right? Just a deferred comp.
But
so,
anyway, I mean,
no, I think that's a real lesson to learn, because I can't tell you how many deals that I've gotten to see or be part of, and they have to unwind. Now a partner who for you willingly left and was okay to get bought out, but when you get one that's contentious and you have not figured out how you're going to divorce, now all of a sudden they can destroy your company, and it's all because early days you just can't afford the right talent, but you can get creative, right?
Yeah.
Deferred comp.
I mean, if you look at the statistics on that, it's like partnerships. It's like they say so many businesses, some crazy high businesses fail within the first year. If you have partners in that business, the number is like 10 times that. So. Yeah, but to me, like, I had in my mind, I was, again, operating out of fear and like trying to just make it work. But I could have definitely had some mentors around me, or like been asking questions that I wasn't asking at the time.
What keeps you up at night?
Well, what keeps me up is actually like most of my ideas. And figuring out which ones that we need to implement, which ones I need to just throw in the trash can. But I mean, that's on the good side of things. I mean, honestly, like, as a business owner, I mean, I remember it wasn't even that long ago. Like, there are times when you just don't know if it's gonna work. Like, you don't. I mean, I remember going to, I had a P.O. box when I first started the company, because I was bouncing around, you know, between that office and this place and this. I needed at least a stable address I could get checks at. And so I remember payroll was like $15,000 a month at this time, and I had $11,000 in our checking account, and I remember thinking, there is no way I'm going to be able to make payroll tomorrow. And I mean, I literally went to the P.O. box, nothing was there, so I got my credit card, cash advance. I mean, there are so many certain like situations like that I'm not necessarily like proud of, but looking back, hindsight, would I have done it differently? I don't know if I had any other options at the time. It's like, I'm all in and I'm betting on myself, you know? But keeping me up at night today is really trying to figure out what's next, you know, which product to focus on tomorrow or the next day. And like, we're still figuring things out from EOS and implementing that. And honestly, when I thought this is the answer, this is going to fix all of our problems, what they don't tell you when you implement this is like how many problems it creates. It's like organizing your closet. You got to take everything out first, and your entire house is a wreck. That's how it feels. That's how it felt for me. And we're still kind of putting the pieces back together, but it's fun. It's sometimes still today I'm like, it feels like, you know, for the last 10 years I've been in this grind, and now I'm like getting ready to do it again on these other ventures. And it's really coming to terms with a sense of like, I know what I can do differently, and I know how to do things better, and I believe that's going to help. So I mean, that's what makes me fall asleep if I'm staying up late. It's like, okay, I know I can do this. And then I really think about the team that I've got, and they're the ones that I can really rely on. Yeah. Yeah.
Did you raise money, or did you just bootstrap it and go right in?
I never raised a dime. Like that first contract, I borrowed $20,000. So I got this contract, had some success, and then by my third hire, like I was still cash flowing just to grow, just to pay bills. And so I went to the bank and I was like, hey, I need $20,000. I don't have anything to collateralize it with, but here's our books. And they were like, okay, you have enough cash flow. I didn't even know this at the time. Like, we have enough monthly cash flow that we can loan you $20,000. So I took that 20 grand and I bought office furniture. I bought desks and, you know, computers for 4 of us in a conference room. I built a conference room out with this, you know, screen clients could come into, and we could look at their work and talk about their projects and stuff. And so I took out some debt. $20,000 at the time was like a lot of money. But that's really all I ever did. You know, I wanted to, even for these new ideas I have. I'm like, do I need to go and raise some money for them? But right now, I'm not in a position where I want to do that. You know, I may scale, like if we get to 5-6 million in revenue, and like I need money to scale, where I'm like infusing, you know, 20-30 million into it, I'll do that. But I'm not going to right now. To me, it's a lot of fun kind of growing it bootstrap organic just through cash flow. I mean, I like it.
Yeah. Well, and you got a good team, so that makes it easier to do.
Yeah. For sure. Takes a lot of the pressure off you.
Yeah. Okay, let's get a little lighthearted.
Okay.
If these folks see you out at dinner somewhere and they want to buy you a drink, what's the drink of choice?
You'd probably know better than me, because by that time, I don't really remember. No, I'm just joking. I've become a huge fan of gin and tonics recently. Roku gin out of Japan is like $20, and it's better than Hendrix, which is 2.5 times the price. Try it if you haven't tried it. Love it.
Roku gin.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, gin and tonic.
So free advice, right? Meet him for a cocktail, buy him a Roku gin and tonic, and then chew his ear for an hour, right? You're gonna probably learn a lot through this process.
No, I'd love that. I love being around you guys, and it's a two-way street for me too, all the time. You know, I feel like through all relationships and friendships, there's a lot to learn from everyone in the entrepreneurial world. Yeah. So,
biggest highlight of the past year in terms of either business, EO, What's a highlight that when you look back, go, man, all that hard work's totally worth it?
I'm hoping it's Thursday. I have the biggest pitch of my life on Thursday.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. But honestly, even if that doesn't go well, I'll just talk about it. I don't mind. It's not like a secrecy thing, but we do a lot of work with athletes. If you look at our portfolio, you'll see a lot of athletes in there. But because of that, and it's really, I leveraged, this is something I didn't talk about, but I built the first website for Kevin Durant when he was leaving Oklahoma City. I signed the contract with him in June, like June 26th, and on July 4th, 2 weeks later, he says he's leaving. So I was like, we're screwed. I put so many eggs in this basket, and we're not even gonna get to do the work. Well, we did. Anyway, that turned into this pitch I have on Thursday. We're pitching Wasserman, who's running the Olympics in 2028. They're the world's largest talent management company in pretty much every country. But we partnered with them. We get to do a lot of their clients' work, and it's really, really amazing. But we're pitching them on an app that will be used by every athlete that they have. And they have 1,800 athletes, and they're going to use it to monetize in different ways that they're not. And regardless of whether they agree to the full extent of what I want to do and be partners, it's still a huge success. But what I didn't tell you is, in order to get here, I built Kevin's website and paid for it entirely out of my own pocket just to get our foot in the door. At the time, what was Rock Nation, and literally leveraged that into another deal that I did for half price, and then I did another one for free, and now it's turned into this, and that's the grind, and it's turned into this relationship where we are the go-to. We're like their preferred digital media partner when it comes to an athlete or an artist needing anything digital marketing related, whether it's like creating a social media post for one of their paid sponsors or helping them grow their following or whatever it is. But
that's awesome.
That's my biggest accomplishment, I think, just getting the meeting.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And it's a relationship, right?
Yeah. 100%. Yeah.
So how do you feel when people say, I can't start a business because nobody will give me money?
I think that's an easy, I think that's an easy mentality to have. That's like the easiest excuse, though, right? I'm not going to do something because I don't have this. Well, and that just completely, I don't really relate to that because of maybe how I was raised. But to me, you have to take, I'll use this in an I statement. It's like, I had to take the first step on my own. I have to go out and risk something. I would argue even today, there's a lot of entrepreneurs, even in Silicon Valley, that are they really entrepreneurs? If you look up the definition, does anybody have a phone out? Google the definition of an entrepreneur real quick. Literally, I believe the verbatim definition is someone in business sacrificing and risking more than what is expected. And
monetary risk.
Yeah, you're not an entrepreneur. By definition, you're not an entrepreneur unless you're risking something. So raising capital is awesome, but if you're just doing that in the intent of starting a business, is that really being an entrepreneur? It's just a question that you have to ask. What is the definition?
Risk of profit.
Yeah, to be an entrepreneur, you have to be risking of profit or that monetary value. So I believe anyone can do it. You just have to be willing to be problem solving and risk taking.
Yep.
Yeah.
So let's open it up for some questions, because I think in these kinds of chats, what you want to know probably has tremendous value in everybody else in the audience, right? So how are we going to do with the mic when he's got to use the mic?
Yeah. Yeah.
Who's got a question? Let's right in the back. All right. Huge throw. Here we go.
We've all got it. So what mechanism or people do you have in place to ensure that you're consistent with EOS? Maybe if you're, and entrepreneurs aren't always the consistent people. They like variety. You need like sometimes that COO type, that's structured. What mechanism or people do you have in place to ensure you stay consistent with EOS?
Yeah, for sure. One of the core principles of EOS is having a living and breathing scorecard. We've identified 15, I think there's around 15 or so metrics that I can look at. Anyone our leadership team can look at on a daily basis, and we update it weekly, and we get like a real-time snapshot of how the company is doing, and that incorporates everything from backlog. I mean, even before backlog, proposals out versus work to be performed under contract, backlog right there, and then so that's on like the more of the finance side of things. But then we have like over under, like are we over on these projects or under on these, and then we have like one of our metrics is our retainers. Like we have a lot of clients who retain us on a monthly basis. That recurring revenue is priceless, by the way. Another thing I would probably do is focus more on recurring revenue if I was restarting this company. But scorecard, like figure out the key metrics to your company and make sure that you're not the one responsible for updating that scorecard every week.
Yeah. Okay.
I have one metric I'm responsible for, and that's it's business, it's proposals out and proposal value. That's it. And so other than that, my team does all of it. And we meet once a week and we go through it face to face.
Is there a dashboard you use for all the KPIs?
Right now, I mean, we use Google spreadsheets.
Yeah.
It's awesome. Like, we don't have this pretty fancy dashboard. It's a spreadsheet.
Cool.
There's some formatting on there, but like, it's a variable. Like I need to see it green or red, and that's all I care about. Good question. No.
What's EOS?
EOS stands for Entrepreneur's Operating System. There we go. Look, I read this book called Traction maybe 3 years ago, and I was at a breaking point. A lot of my team was at a breaking point. I had 20 people reporting to me without any infrastructure, and it was just complete chaos. And I'm really the only one that knew like things that a lot of other people should know. And so, on the brink of disaster, that's when I implemented EOS. Yeah. We had plateaued. Like for me, I didn't really look. I was kind of had these blinders on, but our revenues had plateaued. We were right around 2.5 million every year, and I couldn't figure out why. And then I looked at myself.
Awesome. So that's interesting. Thank you for being so transparent. First of all, it's really good to hear the meat and potatoes of the grind, right? Rather than the I like gin and tonics.
Yeah.
You know what I mean, man?
For sure.
EOS. So year 2, EOS has come out with the study of incorporating conation science. Have you heard of it?
I have not.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm going to the conference though, so maybe they'll talk about it.
I will after. So anyway, the interesting thing is that I have for you is 2 questions for you for 2 different generations. If you were to give advice to the millennial generation as an entrepreneur with the grind, so to speak, what do you think your go-to strategy would be for that person? And the second question I have for you is, did you have difficulty building your team with cloning yourself?
Okay, let me answer that second question first.
Of course.
There's a lot of looking back. Like I remember a lot of times where I was like, I wish I could clone myself. That's the worst thing possible for this business.
Yeah. Agreed.
I thought I wish I had, and there's parts of me that are great. I'm not saying that by any means, but I had, when building out my leadership team, even is like looking at other people's strong suits and making sure that they're filling where I'm the weakest. So building out that leadership team around that philosophy really helped. To your first question, real quick,
The millennial.
Millennial, okay, yeah.
Millennial go-to strategy for your company,
like if
client-facing.
If I were telling a millennial like what to do and not to do to start a company like this, I'm technically a millennial, like by 2 years, I think, but most of my employees are millennials, and it's not a negative thing at all. Like,
agreed.
They're amazing.
Agreed.
They have amazing work ethic. But one thing that I really struggle with, and I tell anyone this, not just a millennial, but I see it more prevalent, is they need a little bit. They tend to need a little bit more guidance up front, but they're willing to work their butts off. But they need affirmation more than what I would need, and so it's setting them up for success. Looks like more of like coaching and mentorship, and there's more culture and personality and relationships are a big part of our culture. And this guy's got an amazing book on culture if you haven't read it, but culture is more than half of everything, and I believe it's the key to success in having a business, and it's setting up. And like I said, 2 years ago it was a different story, but what I tell a millennial, the one thing I tell them is no one's going to give you something. Like it's not necessarily like an entitlement thing for me. It's taking initiative. Like, don't wait. What I mean by giving you something, no one's like, if you see something that's going to better the company and better your position and process, whatever, like, speak up, contribute, be a part of it. Like, I don't want you to sit there and be a puppet. Like, I know that you can do that, and I can probably find a lot of other people here to do that, but one of our core values is takes initiative, and that is something that I really, really strongly believe that generation as a whole may be afraid. They're afraid to take a risk for whatever reason that I wouldn't want them to be afraid to take.
Interesting.
Yeah. I don't know politically correct how that was or not, but I don't care. Like, you see something that can better you, your job, the company, like, speak up about it at least,
Yeah, interesting. The study that, and I'll pass this on, the study that we've been working on is just that the digital age with the middle of the road, I guess I'll say millennials, is that confrontation has been a challenge due to the fact that the digital space is so easily maneuvered. It's, swipe left, swipe right, turn off, turn on, rather than get into the grind, and that's been a challenge in communication. So I'd love to speak with you after, but I'm not going to hijack it. I found the opposite to be true, is that they love the feedback, but you just have to be willing to give it to them more regularly. Like, yeah.
Hi, Cody. Thank you. You talked about implementing EOS, so that is looking into the closet and taking everything out and putting everything back together in the right place. So when you did that, what happened to your day-to-day operations? Did you have some disruptions? And also, did you lose any of your core people at that time?
I did, yes, to both those things. Is this working? Yes? Okay, perfect.
Go ahead and clip it on here so you don't pull it.
I kind of like it. Okay. Is that still good? Okay. Taking everything out of the closet, putting it back together, what did I lose from that? Well, I lost probably 6 or 7 of my staff, even as recently as last week. Like, if you haven't been holding people accountable and you just start, you're going to lose a lot of people. Like, that's just a fact. And those aren't the people that you want in your organization. And it's a hard pill to swallow because you've worked so hard to find talented people in this industry, and like, while they may be great and they're going to be very successful somewhere else, and I wish like anyone who hasn't isn't still at my company, like, of course I want them to succeed, but like I said earlier, it also is hurting them that they're not the right person for the right seat. And so for me though, that was part of your question, was how many people have I lost? And like, I lost what I thought was my core leadership team. There's 2 people on it from a year ago that are no longer even at the company. And it's very simple. Like, I analyze and we evaluate based on the same 5 core values, whether you're on the leadership team or you're not. Like, and me myself, like, I have to constantly be looking at myself too against those core values, and I have to set the example, and I have to be the inspiration for my team. You know, that's being an inspiration. Like, this is something I heard from Piyush. It's like, being an inspiration is way more than has way more value to holding someone like accountable in a traditional sense of like. So for me, I did lose a lot of time on my day-to-day. I did.
My first question was the operations. So
yeah.
When you were implementing EOS, what happened to your day-to-day operations? Like, for example, did you lose any deadlines, milestones with your clients? Did you have to work with your clients to give you some time to?
We didn't per se miss deadlines. I was fortunate enough that I was in the middle when we implemented. I had basically 2 really large projects that were going to take a year long. It allowed my first 6 months to take my foot off the business development bucket a little bit and focus on the business, which I needed to do, or else we weren't going to make it, honestly. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hey, I really appreciate you taking the time to be vulnerable with us. It's something that I think is missing often in startup communities. I was hoping you could talk a little bit about relationship building. And I think one of the pitfalls a lot of people run into early on is they're trying to be a people pleaser, and they give away too many things and create this expectation of a lesser value than they're actually worth.
Yeah.
And how do you negotiate that back once you're saying, I gave you this project for free, I gave you this thing for half price? So you talked about doing that for some of your recent projects that's led up to your new opportunity, but I was hoping you just kind of speak on that more.
No, it's a very fine line. And I've walked on the wrong side a lot. My experience is like, the deals that I always wind up cutting, where I am lowering our bill rate or removing hours from the project. Those projects immediately from the get-go, for the most part, and I'll tell you how I make these decisions now, but for the most part, the client doesn't value what you do, and you're removing so much of what you bring to the table, and you're kind of, in my experience, I've never been successful at that mentality of when I have to, those clients complain the most, they expect the most, they immediately become entitled, because for some reason, even though they're still paying you to do, obviously, the work agreement, but they feel like they've cut you a deal because they've given you the business, when in the first place, I'm the one that lowered my rates and this and that. I thought I was helping you. So there's this immediate disconnect. And what I do today in making these decisions, which is, I am more doing, and not necessarily a full-on project for people, but I'll do what we call it spec work, internally, but we're not necessarily designing out or developing out a final product. We're doing a lot of the wireframes and the discovery and the prototyping and creating these beautiful pitch decks for a client that we want to go pitch, and to earn their business by doing that work up front and not saying, let us do your first project for free. I've already taken on the risk, I'm going to do it regardless. Why don't I bring my A game to you and show you, do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And that way we're starting a relationship on equal ground. They know that this was, we're not negotiating value at that point. It's, hey, this is what we want to do for you, and this is the value it's going to add to you as a company. And it's gone very well.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's gonna be dangerous. That's gonna leave a mark.
All right, we're going to have time after this for one more question.
Biggest misconception you had about business, something you thought would be a really huge deal that you really over dramatized in your mind, but ended up being nothing at all, nothing to worry about.
Okay, so more on like the challenge problem side of things. Buying out my partner, at the time, I thought the company was gonna crumble. I was early on, like 3 years into it probably, and had maybe 10 or 11 employees, and there was so much gossip going on that I was unaware of. We were using Slack; it was unmonitored. Like it was just so many different things that I quickly discovered, where I was like, as a business owner, providing like a great opportunity, and then the culture in that time. Like I thought, there's no way I can overcome this because she's tied in with this person who's tied in with these people, and like I thought that my relationships were like they were all crumbling, and that all these, even my own employees and like my partner at the time, we just had a lot of we didn't see eye to eye on some things. And so looking back though, it's like that was just another little bump, but in the moment I didn't sleep for months, like weeks, months, whatever it was, until we sorted this whole thing out. Yeah, it was really tough. It was really challenging, but pushing through it and not giving up, and like again, it was about setting a vision, and like I didn't do it. It was my fault. Like I had all these people complaining and talking about really things that I needed to hear, but I just wish I would have heard them differently. I wish there was that more genuine, authentic relationship, and that's what I'm working towards now with my team. Is like I can't have that with everyone as much as I'd like to, as we've grown, but really still finding ways to have empathy and to connect with individuals. Like we may not have a lot in common. Like I can't have everything in common with 25 people, but there's always something that we can relate to. So like even if it's just taking my team out for lunch one-on-one and trying to do that as much as I can, and like just connecting from time to time, it's helped eliminate a lot of that anxiety that stemmed from that problem. Yeah.
You guys have a great taco game.
Yeah, we're doing pizza now.
Oh.
Yeah, we've moved on. We found the best tacos. Okay, now we're doing pizza. So we do some things culturally. We're like quest for the best, and we have, like we do having that sense of culture. And one thing that I've always been afraid of is like I can't afford to do these things or this or that. I found ways to make it work, but really, again, a fact that from great peers is like giving them what they want and setting them up like in regards to having amazing like opportunities and benefits and culture and like activities and experiences, and providing them with that thing, with all of that, is rather than looking at it as like I don't know if I can afford this, or like is this the right thing to do. They're not going to go and be able to get that going somewhere else. So I'm also creating a competitive advantage by giving them this culture that at times I'm like, this is crazy, but at the same time I have to trust in my team and making sure I have the right people, and if I do, none of that stuff matters because we're going to be successful. So
he calls it crazy, I call it extraordinary.
Yeah.
Right? And if you think you're going to get extraordinary from being ordinary, you're going to fail. Right? You got to have a little crazy in you to believe. Right?
Yeah, that's good. Yeah.
One last question for Cody. All right, one more in the back. Here we go. Bring us home.
So, if an eventual goal is to be fully self-sufficient through your own internal projects and not have to rely on client services, have you started already to allocate a percent of your staff's time towards that? And if so, is there any projects that you feel comfortable sharing, or at least ideas that you would like to pursue?
Well, I'll talk a little bit about allocating. So
Okay.
internal resources to our own products. In 2018, we said our goal for this year would be 1,000 hours of development into our own products, and we're at 1,200. So we've exceeded that, and next year, I think we're going to reset our goals. Actually, our annual is in the next 3 days. We'll be doing that, resetting our goals for next year. But why not 2,000 if we can afford it? Some of the projects we're building right now, I'm not yet comfortable, honestly. We're really close, really close. Hit me up in three months or so, and I'll show you the world. But right now, you know, I'm sure you guys can all respect that.
Cool.
So, yeah.
How about a huge round of applause for Cody? He gets the hard work. You gonna stick around for a little
I'll
bit?
be around.
Have a beer?
Yeah.
So he's gonna stick around. Hit him up for questions. Thank you guys for coming. Please take a second to thank all the sponsors that are here. These things don't happen without all their help. So thanks for coming out tonight.
Also, really quick, you know, I talked about EO and EOA a lot. The EOA is an accelerator program of EO. I joined that 5-6 years ago, and it changed my life. If you want to talk about that, we can talk about that too. So anyway, thanks guys. I appreciate the opportunity.